I teach at Lafayette High School, and I am a teacher for students with moderate to severe disabilities. I have a bachelor's in science and a master's both in special education for moderate to severe disabilities. In high school, I wanted to be a nurse, and once I got to college, within the first 6 weeks of trying to take anatomy and physiology, I very quickly realized that science was not for me, and so I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And so I took a career test at the UK Career Center, and it came up with my highest thing was to be a teacher. And I was like, duh, I've always wanted to be a teacher. Like, why didn't I know that? But teaching has kind of always been my number 2 on my list of things I wanted to do when I grew up. And I always thought I would teach 3rd grade, but once I saw that suggestion of, oh, you should be a teacher, I was like, oh, I'll do special ed, duh. And that's what I do. The thing I like the best about teaching special ed is that I get to be an advocate for people who are underrepresented or underserved, and I get to provide them with services that allow them to be the most successful versions of themselves. My favorite part of my day is walking in the morning and having a few quiet moments to organize things before the students start coming in, and that's when I like to, where they all trickle in, I get to have a little conversation with each of them and say hello and good morning, and they greet me back, which a lot of times is a skill that we've had to teach them to do. It doesn't come naturally for some students. And asking them how their night was. And then during calendar, when we all go around and ask what we did last night and what we had for dinner. And so I like getting to hear about the kids' nights and what they've had for dinner and how they've interacted and what they do outside of school and getting to see a different side of them. I think my biggest challenge as a teacher is finding the time and energy to implement and create new projects. There's all kinds of skills that my students need to be successful once they leave my classroom. And there's so many different ways to teach them. And sometimes I have lots of great ideas of things that I would love to implement and love to teach them. And it can take a long time to collect the materials and to make data sheets and to design the curriculum of how you want to teach this skill. And sometimes you get bogged down in the day-to-day of taking care of 10 kids all day, and by the end of the day you're just tired, and it's hard to make new stuff and come up with time to do new things. My biggest success as a teacher is creating the Green Team here at Lafayette, and the Green Team is a group of my students who are in charge of all of the recycling for the entire school. Several years ago there was a need for recycling to be done at Lafayette, and nobody had stepped up to do it, and I saw that as an opportunity for my students to gain valuable vocational skills and have job training. So we started doing it, and people were very grateful for us for providing that service. A year later, we joined a group called the Waste Busters, and so since then we've won awards. We've won, I think, about $3,000 just for the Green Team to use to make our school cleaner and greener. And then we've saved the school, I think in the first year of doing Waste Busters, $25,000. And of that money, the school got to keep that $25,000 that they weren't spending on the trash pickups. So my kids, well, I feel like a lot of people would say, like, oh, you're just teaching them to do custodial work. They're doing so much more than custodial work. There's value in their labor. They're serving their school. They're getting to practice job skills. And whether or not they go on to do custodial work or whether they get to go on and do other types of labor, those are still job skills that they'll use after high school. I would recommend to do it if it's absolutely what you want to do. With special ed, it seems like most people have a sibling or a cousin or a family member that has a disability, and that's how most of us get into special ed. And special ed, I get so sick of hearing it, but it does take special people. And so if you have the desire to work with people with disabilities, if you feel that tug in your heart to definitely explore it, because there's so many jobs and there's only going to be more jobs in the future. I like to tell people when I see students in the hallway, general ed students that stop and interact with my students, I always like to ask them what they did or what they're going to do in college. And they always tell me something, and I'm always like, have you ever thought about being a special ed teacher? And they're like, oh, no, I haven't. But so many of them often say, oh, my cousin has a disability. And that's what I think it takes for a lot of us, is having that family member and having that heart to stop and say hi to a person with a disability that might not be as accessible or easy to talk to as another peer might be in the hallway. And I like to remind them that I didn't apply for a job to teach. So many people have a hard time finding a job, and I got a call at 9 p.m. on a Sunday night asking me if I could come interview in 12 hours. And I was like, how did you find me? And they're like, we saw your name on the registry of teachers. And at that time, I had just graduated and kind of wanted to take some time off, and figured I would go in for practice interviewing, and then here I am 10 years later. But they are desperate for teachers. I have 4 student teachers a year, and I've never had any student teachers ever have trouble finding a job, ever. They get grabbed up as soon as they graduate. So there's a lot of growth in the field, and lots of different things you can do with a special ed degree, and not just teaching. You can do speech or occupational therapy, music therapy, applied behavioral analysis, and modified behaviors. So there's lots of potential and lots of different things you can do with the degree.